Coming up on Network Africa, Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu steps down from his role as ECOWAS chairman, handing over to Sierra Leone's President Julius Maada Bio. The Global Terrorism Index 2025 shows the Sahel region in Africa is the hardest hit by terrorism worldwide. Plus, Mali's interim president, Assimi Goïta, is on a state visit to Russia, laying a wreath at the tomb of a known soldier. Hello and welcome to the program this week. I'm Layo Olarinde. We begin with stories and happenings that made headlines over the weekend.
Please be seated.
On Saturday, the West African Economic Summit hosted by Nigeria in Abuja ended with Benin Republic's President Patrice Talon highlighting one of the region's main barriers to integration as language.
Ceci est là une preuve de notre incapacité à nous intégrer parce que nous ne parlons pas tous la même langue, aussi dans une région qui n'est pas.
This is the proof that we are not able to integrate ourselves because all of us, we are not speaking the same language, and that it's difficult for us to understand each other.
President Talon paused mid-speech to switch interpreters to prove that language is a major barrier, making the region unable to integrate itself.
Même si l'anglais est la langue la plus partagée au monde et que chacun des Africains doit parler l'anglais, je suis trop vieux pour apprendre l'anglais, que prochainement nous puissions nous communiquer, nous échanger en Yoruba, en Swahili ou en Hausa.
I'm too old to learn English, but I hope that in the future, and even if I recognize that all Africans should speak English, I hope that in the future we should have this type of discussion in Yoruba, Hausa, or Swahili.
His remarks were followed by calls by Nigerian President Bola Tinubu for deeper integration, collective action, and shared prosperity.
We gather at a decisive moment. Today is not about celebrating how far we've come, but forging a new path that leaves behind fragmentation amidst opportunities and moves all towards deeper integration, collective action, and shared prosperity. West Africa is one of the last great frontiers of economic growth. Yet, opportunity alone does not guarantee transformation. Opportunity is not destiny. We must earn it through fusion, integration, policy coherence, collaboration, and capital alignment.
And on Sunday, two South African engineers, Frick Potgieter and Peter Hoekstra, returned to Johannesburg, cutting short their 12-year sentence by presidential pardon after spending over 2 years in prison in Equatorial Guinea.
Apply pardon to these two
The pair were arrested on February 9, 2023, and sentenced to 12 years in prison on alleged drug trafficking charges. Their release was confirmed on Saturday evening after the pardon was granted by Equatorial Guinea's president.
We welcome them back in South Africa with the clemency, the presidential pardon from the president of Equatorial Guinea, who has found it in his wisdom to apply pardon to these two good South Africans who have stayed in Equatorial Guinea for almost 2 years now, and they were sentenced to 12 years.
In July 2024, the United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention concluded that the oil workers had been unlawfully imprisoned. At the time, the UN urgently called for their immediate release.
President Julius Maada Bio of Sierra Leone has emerged as the new chairman of the Authority of Heads of State and Government of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. This is as Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu's two-term reign at the helm of affairs of the regional bloc comes to an end. At the bloc's 67th ordinary session, which held in Abuja, outgoing chairman President Tinubu expressed concern over the slow pace in activating the ECOWAS standby force, urging West African leaders to move decisively from planning to implementation in combating terrorism and transnational crime. Our State House correspondent, Emperor Simon, reports.
The last time the authority of the heads of state and government of ECOWAS met in this hall, the decision to approve the exit of Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso was reached. Today at the round table, the flags of the three countries are conspicuously missing. But what decision will ECOWAS be taking today? This is what we are expecting. Follow us. President Bola Tinubu leads other heads of state into the hall after a closed-door meeting that lasted for several hours. As they settle down, the president of the ECOWAS Commission gives the opening remarks.
Those who join President Yakubu Gowon, head of state Yakubu Gowon of Nigeria, to establish ECOWAS deserve our permanent commendation.
President Tinubu has been chairing the authority of the heads of state and government of the ECOWAS since 2023, and under him, the organization has made some giant strides, including the establishment of a standby force.
We must act decisively to operationalize the ECOWAS standby force on the fight against terrorism to serve as an instrument for peace and stability for our region.
After the speeches, the meeting goes into a closed-door session for a few minutes before members of the media are asked to return for a brief on the major outcomes.
It has been a profound honor and privilege to lead this esteemed body, and I remain deeply humbled by the trust and support you have extended to me throughout my tenure. As I now hand over the mantle of leadership to my great friend and dear brother, His Excellency, President Julius Maada Bio of Sierra Leone, the new chairman of ECOWAS Authority of States and Government, I do so with a deep sense of fulfillment and optimism for the future of West Africa.
The president then hands over to his successor. He vacates the chairmanship seat to take his new seat as a member. In his inaugural speech, President Julius Maada Bio announces key areas his leadership will focus on in the next 1 year.
As chair, I will prioritize 4 key areas. First, restoring constitutional order and deepening democracy. Second, revitalizing regional security cooperation. Third, unlocking economic integration. Fourth, building institutional credibility. ECOWAS must reform itself and become more transparent, efficient, and responsive to its people's needs.
With that, the event comes to a close as President Bola Tinubu and the heads of state make their way out of the hall. But the president of the ECOWAS Commission engages members of the media for more on the outcomes of their engagements.
With regard to our relations, ECOWAS's relations with the members, the 3 member states that have withdrawn and formed the Alliance of Sahelian States, the authority has decided on the appointment of a suitable candidate as the chief negotiator to lead the discussion with the 3 countries. ECOWAS may have been facing challenges just like any institution, but ECOWAS remains what it is.
And these words of assurance given by the ECOWAS Commission President as to the strength of ECOWAS in the face of its challenges is one thing that President Julius Bayo has to run with as the new chairman of the Authority of Heads of State and Government of ECOWAS. From the banquet hall of the State House in Abuja, Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
Mali's leader, Assimi Goïta, is scheduled to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin at the Kremlin. And this is during his ongoing state visit in Moscow. President Goïta took part in a wreath-laying ceremony at the tomb of the unknown soldier in Moscow on Monday, adjusting ribbons on a wreath and saluting marching Russian servicemen. According to the Kremlin, Mr. Goïta will hold talks with Russian leader Vladimir Putin. Both leaders are expected to discuss bilateral cooperation in various spheres, as well as topical issues on the regional and international agenda. Since the 2020 military coup in Mali and Russia have strengthened their relationship, with Russia becoming a key political and military partner for Mali's ruling junta. This partnership has seen increased cooperation in various sectors, including military assistance and mineral extraction. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has expressed concern after the United States joined Israel's bombing campaign against Iran. President Ramaphosa is urging the U.S., Israel and Iran to allow the United Nations mediate a peaceful resolution to the conflict. At the onset of Israel's ongoing airstrikes against Iran, African governments issued a range of responses following the attacks. While some states, such as South Africa, Sudan, and Mauritania, condemned the attacks, others refrained from criticism, issuing measured statements urging de-escalation and dialogue. Well, the African Union was among the first to respond, expressing deep concern over the violent escalation, which killed hundreds and wounded thousands, and calling on all parties to avoid further military action. Well, South Africa, which is a long-time pro-Palestine ally, condemned the Israeli attacks, slamming violations of international law. The country has consistently stood against Israel's military actions in Gaza. Well, joining us now for more on this is our correspondent in South Africa, Innocent Samosa. Hello, Innocent.
Hello, colleague. A very good evening to you and our viewers. It's good to be alongside you.
Welcome to the program. A surprising turn of events in the Middle East we saw, over the weekend. The U.S. joining Israeli strikes on Iran, which has prompted President Ramaphosa's call for a peaceful resolution. Tell us more about the president's reaction and message.
Yeah, indeed. South Africa's government has expressed concern over the United States military involvement in the escalating conflict between Israel and Iran, but also, slotting in America in that. But of course, President Cyril Ramaphosa had mentioned that he had hoped that the United States, particularly under President Donald Trump, would use its influence to promote dialogue between these two nations. But we also heard a colleague from the presidency spokesperson, that is Vincent Magwenya, saying that South Africa is now calling on the United Nations to take lead in brokering some sort of peace. So it does seem as though South Africa wants to throw its hat in commenting as to what is happening there in the Middle East. But yeah, for now we do know that the South Africa is condemning the United States at the moment, colleague.
Well, in light of the heightened tension, the conflict in that region, what is the situation with South African citizens living or working in the Middle East? We know some countries, have started repatriating their citizens.
Yeah, so we have not had anything from the Department of International Relations. I guess they're working around it. which is a difficult operation. We do know that some planes are grounded at this point in time. So we've not heard from the Department of International Relations as to how they're going to carry out the operation. And we do not know how many South Africans are basically, stuck in Israel or in Iran. But as soon as we get those, details, we'll be able to share them with our viewers. But we do know, colleague, that the ambassador of Iran to South Africa has agreed to speak to Channels Television, and that will be on Wednesday, where he will tell us what his views are with the current escalating conflict in the Middle East. Layo?
All right then, Innocent, we do wait for that interview. In the meantime, thank you so much, Innocent Samosa, our correspondent in Johannesburg.
Thank you so much, colleague.
Well, let's take a break now on the program. Still ahead. Nigeria sweep titles at the first ever IFAF Africa Flag Football Continental Championships in Cairo, Egypt. We'll give you more details after the break. Please join us again. Welcome back to the program. The escalating conflict between Israel and Iran is reverberating far beyond the Middle East, rattling emerging economies across the global south, including Ghana, where rising inflation and surging fuel prices are threatening recent signs of economic stabilization. In Accra, the capital, fuel costs are climbing sharply, impacting both transportation and trade. For ordinary Ghanaians, the effects are tangible, affecting food and transportation, with small business owners also feeling the strain. As Iran remains a key player in global oil production, Israeli strikes on its nuclear facilities and Revolutionary Guard infrastructure has sparked concerns over further disruption to global oil exports. A former UN senior mediation advisor, Emmanuel Bombade, in Ghana, is urging his country to maintain a neutral stance in the growing conflict.
Anytime there's rise or fall in dollar, it affects our business, because if the dollar goes up, definitely our items too, the price will go up. And when it comes down to, it will also come down. So all that we are asking from the government is for the dollar to be stable, so that our prices for our item can also be stable for our customers.
At any time that we have such a global crisis, it is not for us to pick between one or the other party, but to ask what laws have been violated, what precedents have been reneged upon, and to call for the respect of those international norms, regulations that have been violated, and to bring everybody to respect them. We need to pursue our current foreign policy that is inspired by positive neutrality, fully aware that, one, if this war were to expand in scope, then the effects are going to be very long term. And what that will mean is working very hard at the level of the African continent to be able to define a foreign policy in which the unity in Africa of a collective voice informs how we respond. And whilst we do that, we can then see within ourselves as Ghana how we continue to be a leader in inspiring this common sense of unity.
To security matters now, the 2025 Global Terrorism Index, GTI, is reporting that the Sahel region in Africa accounted for 51% of global terrorism-related deaths in 2024, and that's up from 48% in 2023. According to the report published by the Sydney-headquartered Institute for Economics and Peace, the Sahel also accounted for 19% of all worldwide terrorist attacks in 2024. In the region, Burkina Faso remains the most affected country. Over 700 deaths recorded across the country were linked to the group JNAW. In Niger, more than 400 lives were lost in terrorist attacks last year. Insurgents reportedly targeted villages, military outposts, and also public gatherings. In Nigeria, Attacks in the northeastern states of Yobe and Borno killed hundreds of people and wounded several others in 2024. In Mali, a brazen attack on the gendarmerie school in the southern part of the capital, Bamako, left 60 soldiers dead last year. According to the United Nations, terrorist attacks have continued unabated in 2025, and the death toll continues to rise. In Sudan, the Rapid Support Forces RSF commander Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo has appeared among his forces for the first time since the outbreak of the civil war. Although the date and location of the footage cannot be independently verified, RSF released the video via their Telegram channel on Sunday. The video also shows RSF troops, thousands of them lined up in a desert, Dagalo's arrival and his interaction with the soldiers. Speaking to the men, Dagalo said problems are not solved through tension, but at the negotiation table through discussion and understanding, adding that everything can be resolved through dialogue. Now, this marks Dagalo's first public appearance alongside his forces since the outbreak of fighting between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces back in April 2023. Humanitarian aid and consignments have been dispatched to the communities worst affected by the flooding in South Africa's Eastern Cape province. Several government officials have also visited the areas declared disaster zones, where they met with local residents assessing the ongoing relief efforts. Volunteer groups working in the area helped residents to receive food supplies and essential clothing as officials inspected the houses most severely damaged by the flooding and speaking with the local residents in the municipalities of Goma and Atlantis. Well, President Cyril Ramaphosa had already visited the province, where he expressed his condolences to those affected by the floods. In addition, the administration says it's expediting issuance of documents that were lost by local residents as a result of the disaster. Applications for documents are currently being processed, as well as necessary assistance for funeral services. Over 90 people died as a result of the natural disaster that hit the Eastern Cape province.
We were with our partners from Gifted the Givers, where we were able to also donate some relief packages to the community. We've also committed to working with, of course, with the provincial government as well as the district municipality to see how we can assist with expediting the relief efforts to ensure that those affected are able to go back to their houses by the 17th of July, which is the cut-off date.
We had about more than 200 people who we have issued waivers for, which means that they will be getting their identity documents and their birth certificates for free, because we understand that they are affected by the floods.
Burkina Faso has launched an unprecedented national environmental campaign with the aim of planting 5 million trees in 1 hour as part of their fight against desertification. The initiative, called the Patriotic Hour for Greening the Nation, was held in conjunction with the country's 7th National Tree Day. Thousands of citizens from across the country took part in this event, which began at 8 a.m. as people planted trees in urban and rural areas. They carried seedlings, dug holes, and watered the newly planted saplings. In Bobo Dioulasso, that's the second largest city in Burkina Faso, residents also came together in Sector 25 to plant more than 2,000 trees. The campaign represents just 25% of the country's ambitious target of planting 20 million trees this year. During Saturday's operation, more than 4,600 of these plants were introduced into the local ecosystem. The campaign comes as the country, like many Sahelian countries, are grappling with advanced desertification, climate change, and environmental degradation. Finally, on the program, the first ever IFAF Africa Flag Football Continental Championships concluded over the weekend in Cairo, Egypt, after 2 days of intense fixtures featuring both men's and women's national teams from across the continent. Nigeria claimed the top titles in both the men and women tournaments, with spirited performances from competing sides and jubilant celebrations after. Supervised by the International Federation of American Football, IFAF, the tournament took place from June 20 to 21 and featured national teams from Egypt, Nigeria, Morocco, Senegal, Cameroon, Tunisia, and Uganda. Well, flag football is a non-contact variant of American football, and it's gaining traction globally due to its speed and emphasis on safety. The African tournament aimed to expand the sport's regional presence and showcase emerging talent. Well, Nigeria's win earns them a ticket to represent Africa in future global competitions, including potential Olympic contention. The event concluded with a celebratory awards ceremony, recognizing the best teams and players from across the continent, marking a promising beginning for Africa's role in the growing sport of flag football.
Today's competition was great, like first of its kind, and I'm happy for the turnout. It was very competitive, and it's good to know that we have a lot of countries that play flag football, and it's good to develop in other countries, honestly, in this part of the world. So I'm so happy this came out successful, honestly, man. It came out very successful. I thank you for Egypt for hosting this. Egypt did a great job hosting this, and we thank God, we still played them in the finals, and it was a great job. We played great with them. They played great, and we won. We thank God.
The competition was very tough, it was very intense, but it exceeded my expectations, to be honest. But we thank God that we were able to come through with the win, and both our male and female had gold medals. Thank you.
Well, congratulations to the Nigerian team, and that's it on the program for today. Thank you for watching. I'm Layo Olarenji.